All right. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, October 17th, 2024 Scarborough Board of Education workshop. Can we call the attendance, please, Rick?
Yes. Ms. Lindstrom,
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian,
Here.
Mr. Kelleher,
I think he might be joining us late.
Ms. Leon. Isn't
Here.
Ms. Peterson,
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian, Hupp,
She must be joining us late as well.
Ms. Ledger,
Here.
Ms. Raskahana,
She's been excused.
and Ms. Neto.
I'm here. Perfect, thank you. Would everyone join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. All right. Agenda item 4.0 is new business. 4.1 is a continuation of the school board goal setting. This is the work we started last week. I'm sorry, no, started last month. We got through looking at our committee work and talked about the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. Did you want to quickly update us on what happened at the meeting? Yeah, since we started talking about that at the last.
Yeah, I think we had our chairs really stepped up and pulled together a really good meeting that kind of did a lot of things. People gave some updates, people kind of regrouped because we hadn't met for since June, so that was a long time. And then I explained what I actually read our meeting minutes from our board meeting, and just to give them an update, but I wanted to be as so they could access it, and then told them where in the part of the video they could access the streaming if they were interested in listening to the discussion. And then we sort of processed that together as a group of people, all had input. People knew it was coming though, so it was in the agenda, so it wasn't shocking to anybody, which was good. And I think it was a fairly positive meeting. I think people are in the same, like, the committee works by consensus. And it works well for that group. And so we were on the same page a lot of the time. Like, it's not hard for us to reach consensus as a group. And so people kind of said their piece. I think that they're working on, I'm not gonna call it a recommendation, but kind of a final statement that I think they're gonna submit before our vote, so for our consideration. I think they're gonna present it. But just sort of sums up the recommendations that were made. I think the thing that really, this is my personal opinion, I think the through line for that meeting is our recommendations years apart are essentially identical. And so what more work what was the purpose of our committee at that point? If we made the recommendations, we redid them and we made the same recommendations. I mean, what was our purpose? And so that, people are feeling sad about it. I think when everything comes to an end, they believe in the work, some people are like, is this gonna be a pause? And it was sort of like, if there's a new initiative or task or review, it wasn't giving them false hope. I was like, I don't think this is a pause, but could a board in the future recreate and carry the work forward if the need was that, then yes. Yeah. So that's really the update. Turn my volume off. Sounds good. And but otherwise, that was, so I mean, overall, it was a fairly positive meeting. It could have been a really not positive meeting. But I think it was handled extremely well by our chairs. They get a lot of props to them. I think they handled it well. But yeah. We went long, we went really long. Like our usual hour and a half plus another half, 2 hours.
Yeah. Probably have to process for sure.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the community members especially reconstitute into something new. They've thought about that. It'll be remain to be seen if they're able to organize themselves.
Right. All right. Are there any questions for Marla? Jenna, just shout out if you have anything.
Will do.
All right. Okay, so we worked on that, the committee work. We worked on putting together our ideas for the workshop topics. I did just send over a tentative schedule. The question that remains is if you look at it, it would be tonight, of course, is the goal setting workshop, what we're participating in tonight. We're thinking in November to do the nutrition workshop, which would be include information on state funding. How does that impact food choice? Is there grant money available? And how does that impact food choice? Maybe also this could be a good time to hear an update on the backpack program and how they receive donations and funds for that. The outstanding questions, because we haven't quite flushed this out in its entirety, is the technology in the schools topic that was suggested. Really, this isn't, in my mind, what I was hearing at our last workshop was that this would be more something that would we wouldn't hear from necessarily Jen Day, but more in the way of a medical provider. And so the flush out has to be we're thinking is this more, do we let the policy committee do the work, perhaps invite Dr. Vanberg to a policy meeting, and then perhaps invite him to a board meeting versus, and having input in the policy versus having an entire workshop devoted to something when we're not quite there with the policy. So that was one thing. And then the comms team met today and talked about potentially having this be a forum too. So where we have like a parent education piece. So, and we discussed how, the book, The Anxious Generation includes ideas and recommendations. One of them is school related, the rest is really family related, right? And so potentially this is a workshop versus, I'm sorry, this is a forum versus a workshop. So December's might change. All that to say December's might change. January's would be a building update. February is the SEL workshop that was requested. March, academic progress. April, to hear how the pre-K program is doing. How's it going? What are the thoughts for the upcoming year? May, an update, building update, and then June would be the retirees celebration.
This looks great.
Any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just, and again, like, I'm just noticing it now. This past spring, we did the retiree celebration at the second meeting in May. Because if you recall, that's generally also the meeting where we nominate probationary teachers for a second year. And so I think there's one of two things. We can either split those two things apart. And do those nominations separate than the retirees. The other question that I have is like the phase 2 update. Like, might it make sense to just like make that for the June 5th meeting? Because I thought like we were working out until the end of May on the building work.
Yeah, except that I think that let me go to I think our governance document has the May 1st date listed.
Yeah, I just think that we're going to need as much time as possible with a consultant to work through that. So just what?
Yeah. Well, maybe we go ahead and change that retirees to the second, which is the second meeting, which is the 15th. Let's change that for now, and then we can always, so we would have 2 in, as it stands, we'd have 2 in May, but we could push out the SBAC update potentially. I don't know, I guess I would need a little bit of logistics help with how does that work if both bodies have voted on the document that includes a date? I'm not quite sure. Do we have to re-vote on?
I think if you felt like you needed to amend the charge or say
Yeah.
that you need more time.
Yeah, we would just amend it and re-vote, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it might be premature
Yeah.
to do that at this point in time, but it might be something worth considering so that we can allow for as much time as possible in crafting those next steps.
Yeah, like maybe we wait and see what the work is like.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll just note it for now that we have a potential to move that. Okay. All right, sure. But everything else looks good. And then we'll just fill in the speakers, like for nutrition, it'd be Peter, and that gives plus you and Mitchell an opportunity to get to meet a little bit more of the leaders too. All right. If there's no questions on that, let's move on to our operating protocols. These have been, so just a little bit of background. These have been in place, well, gosh, many years. At least, I mean, as long as I've been on the board, and I know before that even. But what the operating protocols are the things that we as a body publicly commit to honoring and to doing. And so every year we take a look and we update as needed. So we're at that time right now. The first one is that, and so well, let me say this, what we need to figure out is there any, or what I want us to figure out tonight, is there any of these that need updating, need adjustment? Is there anything we'd like to add? This just keeps us all working from the same page, right? And even you know, we have our policies that we always fall back on, but this is like that next thing that keeps us kind of all working from the same page. So the first is that the board will represent the needs and interests of every student in our district. We will stay flexible, endeavor to meet the needs of every student while advocating for adequate and appropriate resources. Okay.
I like that it starts with centering student needs.
Yeah. Okay. We will work to keep both the superintendent and fellow board members fully aware of current issues and concerns. Surprises to the board or the superintendent from either individual board members, the superintendent or leadership council will be the exception, not the rule. We agree to ask the board chair or the superintendent to place an item on the agenda instead of bringing it up unexpectedly at the meeting. All right. The board values direct input from stakeholders in the decision-making process, will facilitate receiving feedback. This is meetings and or forums, et cetera, and will seek to foster community engagement. All personnel complaints and criticisms received by the board or its individual members will be directed to the superintendent. While the board is eager to listen to its constituents and staff, each inquiry to individual board members of the board is to be referred to the person who can properly and expeditiously address the issue or to the superintendent. Board members agree that significant feedback obtained on an individual basis will be shared with all other board members. The board will emphasize planning, policy making, and communication rather than becoming involved in the management of the schools. Okay. The board will establish annual goals, assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation, and address any improvement opportunities identified. That's what we're doing today.
We do that later on in the year, right? So at the end of the year.
Yeah, our self-evaluation, yeah.
Can you circulate the rubric? Cause I wanted to put input on it last year and just didn't have opportunity, not opportunity because of you, but opportunity because of me.
Yeah.
To do that, and I think we should agree on that rubric because I did not like it.
Yeah.
And I want to realize, because it was very, it was lengthy and laborious, and I think it was I was not the only one who faced challenges in getting it submitted in a timely and meaningful manner.
And
Sure.
Which I don't want to make that the problem.
Is that self-evaluation is part of a policy? Yes,
Is it? I
I
don't know.
believe so.
I'll look at it, because we were gonna review the rubric.
We're gonna review that one, and we are also going to review the superintendent
Yes.
evaluation. Let me see if that's under.
Use.
School board self-evaluations, policy BBAB. We just went through this one, but it doesn't, we don't put our form in there, format.
Okay.
Yeah, so the one that sorry, what?
Did you say BBAB?
Yes. The form we use, I'm pretty certain comes from MSMA. As a template that they give us, but I can double check that.
Yeah, I think it's circulate it for some feedback ahead of time and see if there's any amendments that are requested or wanted.
Yeah, and I'll also send the superintendent one too.
Yeah, and I just want to, if there's a way to streamline it, I want to make it a little more streamlined if possible.
Yeah, and perhaps not so long and involved and yeah.
Because if people aren't filling it out, it's not fulfilling its purpose,
Right,
and that was a struggle.
yeah. I agree.
I don't know if this is helpful, but in the policy, it says the board may seek the assistance of the superintendent in identifying standards for assessment and topics for discussion and or in selecting an evaluation method or instruments that meet that need. I don't know if it keeps it vague enough that. Yeah, I mean, our current evaluation tool, which I agree with you, Shannon, I think it does come from MSMA, follows those standards that match up with the purposes of the board, right? The first one is vision, leadership, and accountability. The second is board governance and policy. The third is communications and community relations. And then there's the fourth standard is fiscal resources, staff recruitment and environment, and finally ethical leadership. So, those are really like the key pieces, right?
I agree, but if board members are not filling it out and submitting it in a way to actually make it useful, because then we need to make the
Yeah.
tool functional, and that was the. I know there was one, I think, and another, there's new board members and maybe there's new energy and that would be fantastic. But we've got to have something that's functional because it was very difficult to use them with people who either didn't submit them or submit them at the last, like, I remember they sent them so last minute, you weren't even able to do the analysis.
Yeah.
So we could use it. It was.
Right, so,
Problematic.
I think it's just kind of like peeling away the layers of the onion to figure out, is it the tool or is it the
Yeah.
commitment?
And-
What is the problem we're trying to solve for?
And if you can reduce friction in using the tool, that
Yep.
would be very helpful. I think even making it like a PDF that you could click on would help. I think there's just some
Yep,
streamlining that can be done just to make sure it's,
Yeah, and we can look at the questions too, like, are they all,
because that was part of the conversation and it was not where our conversation should have been focused on
Right.
during. the
yeah,
meeting.
right,
But we
right.
spent a lot of time
Right.
talking about that and it was
Yeah.
like, this is
Mhm,
not what we should focus on.
mhm. No, I hear you.
Yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think we shouldn't lose any of the content.
Okay, so the seventh is the board will establish annual goals for the superintendent in alignment with overall mission and values of the school district and will evaluate the superintendent annually. So this one, I think, we haven't yet done with Diane. Diane, so I guess in a way, I'm thinking as, this is gonna be, hopefully I say what I mean. So Diane sets the goals for her team. We set our board goals, our overall board goals. And then, at the same time, we have to establish some goals for Diane. Where I struggle is when we're establishing what we want to focus on for the district, which is what our goals are, right? Where our focus should be, what we want to see done. I guess I struggle with how they're different, if that makes sense. How the two are different.
I think there's a nuance there. I think that we set sort of direction goals, like big picture, like we would like to, like our goals was like, we want to get a building across the finish line was one of our goals last year.
Yeah.
We want to support student achievement. I think Diane's goals with her leadership team, and I haven't reviewed them in depth, but I think they're more directed towards what, like, as a leadership team, how are we gonna implement the policies? And I really like, I'm gonna continue on my mission to braid together this with the strategic planning document under the superintendent. I found it, remember I lost it, I think I found it. That I call it the strategic plan, we have a different name for it, I want to use the comprehensive education for the district, which is sort of the guiding document of our long range vision and our for continuous improvement and our core value statement. And I think that is our overarching rainbow over the top of everyone's plan. So like our strategic vision should align with our annual goals, which align with the team's annual, the leadership's annual goals and the district annual goals that are driven by the core value. And that's why I'm constantly trying to braid the language from this into our documents and those documents, because these documents are living and breathing. They're not a strategic plan that sits on a,
Right.
it's not one and done. And it's also something that should be our guiding principle. And if it's not our guiding principle, then this is not a strategic. It's just not, then that needs to be changed as well, because these should all talk to each other and our policies should also flow from this. And I think I know I've talked about this a lot. This is important to me, that we have a unifying, our core value statement should be our driving principle for everything we do. Our annual goals are what we want to accomplish this year. Leadership annual goals are how they're going to implement district policies for the year. The strategic plan is our long-term plan for the district. and how we approach those goals. You know, there's 4 themes. It's a good document. It's actually a
Mm.
great document.
It's a great document, yeah.
And so I think that's how they all play with each other. Not to be too informal, but how they all interact
Yeah.
or interweave, or how they support each other really, so that everybody is pulling in this.
Yeah, and I think part of the conversation that Shannon and I had even this summer, right, was that with the election of school board changing, right? And
Mhm.
when you're setting your goals, like when we had talked in the spring, right, when we had looked at that self-evaluation tool and you all had kind of reset what the things were month by month.
Yeah.
I think during that conversation, we had talked about kind of setting those 2 things in tandem, right?
Right.
And then when it became clear that you all weren't, at the place where you were ready to do that, Shannon and I had had some conversation about, the reality that as a school district, we needed to set our district goals as a team before the onset of the school year, right?
Absolutely.
Because everything flows down from that, just as you've just been describing, right? Like we establish our district goals as a leadership team, and then school goals and building leader goals waterfall
Absolutely.
from that,
Yes.
right? So that everything is, intertwined as you're describing.
Yeah. So. I think that conversation is good. I think we should revisit that maybe today, actually, as part of our annual goals, which is not prioritizing, but reordering maybe when we're doing this and how we're doing this
Mhm.
for next year. And like, we didn't do it this year. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay. We're doing the best we can. Like we've
Right.
discussed this. We've been down a member for an entire year.
Right.
There's been a lot going on in addition to our normal
Yeah.
duties. Actually, so I have
And this
whole
was the
spiel
first-
at the last.
This
Yeah,
was,
you have
yeah,
this was the first voting change,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
It was the
So-
first voting change and we were down, right at the same
Yes.
time. And so
Right.
we,
And we had the building project and we had the superintendent search and we had,
Yeah.
like, these are very
things.
important, urgent. Everything has to stop for these things, but they're all happening at once, which is really tapping our resources that we discussed at the last meeting.
Mhm.
And making us have to drill down. So I think this is exactly the time that we should think about
mhm.
that. Yeah. So I think it's okay, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this weird, the plus is that the board is seated now before the school year starts. What is difficult is to get someone on, get them onboarded, get our goals created, get your goals created, all within a essentially 2-month time period. And when we're only meeting once a month.
And maybe it's too much to say that the newly seated board should set the goals. It's probably way more than okay for the
Yeah.
current elected officials in May or in June to set
Yeah,
those
do it.
goals.
At the end of the
Yeah.
school year is the perfect
Mhm.
time.
Right?
to start
Because
it.
we're looking back and forward at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And elections, as much as the charter has changed and that's a controlling document, resignations and special elections are not gonna be things that we're unfamiliar with.
Yeah, and to your point, it does take time to onboard new board members and have them feel like they have their feet grounded and
Yeah.
and an understanding of where we are. And so, maybe it does make sense for outgoing members to kind of set the charge for the next year.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. And then that timing gets really ahead of your planning.
Yeah,
Does that mean us meeting and setting goals on August 1st doesn't help you?
right.
Right.
No,
That's
and
already in-
Yeah.
I did have this conversation with you specifically, Shannon, because I
Mhm.
did feel uncomfortable saying, well, we're gonna go ahead and set our goals.
Right.
But we needed to out of
You had
necessity,
to, yeah.
right? And so it
Yeah.
was like, I'm not trying to like step out of turn, but it was a necessary evil, right?
Yeah, so maybe,
I don't think it's necessarily evil. That's your responsibility.
yeah,
Yeah,
That's your responsibility.
yeah, but I didn't want to,
Yeah.
overstep because, I think the goal is for the board to kind of set those overarching things and then, for everything to waterfall down from that. So, you know, it was a interesting position to be put in as a brand new,
In your first.
you know,
in your first day of
superintendent
work.
coming in like,
Yeah.
hey, just let you know, our goals are all set.
This is what's happening. Yeah, and so maybe what we do, maybe that, I'll pencil in the. Okay, so our next, in June, our second meeting in June is Juneteenth, so we're gonna have to go to the week after, the 26th. I suppose, the 5th and the 26th.
That actually works out better, because then we only have the one meeting in July.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I think that works, and
maybe,
maybe it needs to be a longer meeting instead of, if you broke it up in half, which everyone was on board with, because we don't like long meetings.
yeah,
But
Well,
and maybe that can be our goal setting and, so board and superintendent goal setting.
But I like that it's closer to our evaluations. Cause
Yeah.
that should be informing our goals.
Yeah, because our evaluations would have
Right.
happened.
So now those are,
Now
right,
we're kind
that
of-
would make those
yeah.
tightly aligned.
Sound good, Jenna?
Sounds good to me.
For clarification, we set your goals. You don't set your own goals.
Well, you are my boss.
Yeah, no, yeah. Very true. I'm just thinking about like even just the, jobs I've had throughout my career, we always set our own goals. Or that's just why I'd ask, like if we're setting our goals, like how the.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit more nuanced, right? So even though it's the board will set the superintendent's goals, as Shannon started with, right, one of the first operating protocols is no surprises.
Yeah.
Right, so if you came to me with, something that we had never talked about and said, well, this is your goal for next year, right? Like, we'd probably have some conversation about that, right?
Yeah, and it's been a collaborative process in the past, right? So Diane will have input, right? And she'll, she'll be in here talking about what she thinks too. So, and then from there, that's how they can she can develop the district goals with the lead, with the building leaders and
Okay,
central office.
that makes sense. I think I was more, maybe it came out in the wrong tone. It was more like, I respect your professional abilities. and
No,
everything. So I wanted to make sure you had
that's
built in
exactly how I
autonomy.
took it, so thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and we had just changed, I was gonna pull up, we had just changed our, let me look at it. Last year, we had changed when we were doing our annual review. And so that is,
We pulled it into March.
I think it's March or April. Yeah, March, we were gonna just review the form and then that is when we're gonna check in about our progress towards our goals. And then in April is when board members would complete the review and send it to the board chair for compilation. And that's when we meet with Diane.
Do we want to pull that after next year? Do we want to pull that check-in on our goals back to?
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So if we're gonna do this in June,
I think we should check in March one more time and then make a note that our next check-in for our goals should be back to like January
yeah.
or February. Although that's beginning to become budget season, which I hesitate adding anything to the budget season calendar.
Well, January's still early for
January's
you
still
guys.
early, yeah.
We're
For
doing
us,
our work,
yeah.
right,
Yeah,
during
yeah.
that period of time.
No, I meant once the board starts
Yeah.
doing the budget, I don't want to add
Yeah,
extra stuff.
no,
to that.
I agree.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, which is why we moved that review up too, so, yeah, so after this year. All right. Okay, so 8, the chair will respond to emails but may delegate a response to another member. Individual members, including the chair, may collaborate on responses when requested. Members who receive an email individually will forward the email to the other board members.
Everybody's on the same page.
I think the only piece about that is that second sentence where it says individual members, including the chair, may collaborate on responses. I think we just have to be cautious that that's not happening in a quorum form, right? If you have 4 people collaborating, then you have a quorum that's conducting
That's a meeting.
business on
Yeah.
email.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? So,
Why do we need to put in there that we can collaborate?
I think we
that's
can
good.
take
I
that
don't-
whole
I think we
sentence
know
out.
that.
yeah.
You know, like you've definitely
Yeah.
checked in with me about like to
Mhm.
fact check
Right.
stuff, not in a forum, but they just
Right.
like.
Yeah, like when
Good.
someone has a question about finance, I would go to Jenna and say, hey,
Exactly.
tell me, or long range
Yeah.
planning, or policy, or
policy.
DEI,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
negotiations, not that anybody ever, but those I would,
Negotiations emails
you
are the
know.
easiest.
Hmm?
The negotiation email response are the
Yes.
easiest.
Yes. Yeah, I think we can strike that whole thing.
We can't.
That whole. Are you taking notes? Thank you. Like,
Joe heard.
yeah, for just a quick moment. Yeah, so I feel like we could strike that whole sentence. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, aware that was, I think that's just carried over year to year.
It has,
Mhm.
yeah, it has been. Is that good with you, Jenna?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Only the board as a whole has authority. We agree that an individual board member will not take unilateral action.
Can we say cannot? I know that's like a technical, but like not only like they will not, they cannot, if they actually don't have the authority to.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
maybe it's
that's
not
true.
even we agree,
Yeah.
right?
Just an
Because
individual
that's kind
cannot.
of the expectation,
I
right?
feel like I'm back in a policy meeting, yes.
Yeah.
This is why we work well.
Yeah.
So that second sentence would read, an individual board member cannot take unilateral action.
Yeah.
Sound good?
I like that.
Jenna, sound good?
I think John is. He just
Yeah.
said-
Sorry, I just couldn't hit the button fast enough.
Would you mind just do that? Thank you. This one's ready. Oh, who's an attendee?
Oh, he's an attendee.
Can you change him to a panelist, Ray? I presume that's John.
Fine, this is fascinating. Shannon.
Oh, there he is.
So if you go to the 3 dots and make him a panelist, yeah,
Oh, I see.
great, thank you.
There we are. Perfect, awesome. All right, John, does that work for you too?
Yeah, I see how it is. Forget all about me.
Sorry. All right. Number 10, while we encourage debate and differing points of view, we will do it with care and respect. I think we're all good there.
It's kind of. Geez, I think we. It seems funny that we should have to say that, but, I suppose we don't always know. We'll need to read that.
I feel like it's important to set it as a norm. Yeah, because I think when you think of norms, you're thinking of how you agree to work together as a group, right? And so, yeah, it's weird that we have to say it, but it's important that that's important to
I
us.
mean, I have no problem.
Yeah. Would be nice. If everyone played nice.
Yeah,
Sandbox
yeah.
off automatically.
Right.
All right, the board recognizes that publicly discussing questions in meetings is important for transparency. We agree to move the question forward when discussion is concluded or becomes overly repetitive. Issues that require or lead to an in-depth discussion should be moved to a workshop session. 12 executive sessions will only be used to discuss appropriate subjects. Board members will be held to the strictest confidentiality regarding executive session subjects and discussions.
I wonder if you could strengthen the first sentence by saying as outlined in Maine state statute. Because it's not up to the group to decide what's appropriate. There are 6
Yeah.
very specific reasons why we can meet in executive session,
Mhm.
and that is it.
How about instead of appropriate, say legally authorized?
Great.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so executive sessions will only be used to discuss legally authorized subjects.
Or in accordance.
Do we want to say in accordance with Maine state law?
Yes. In accordance with Maine state law.
Yeah, I like that.
How about authorized subjects, in accordance to Maine state law, we don't say legally
Yeah.
authorized by law.
Yeah, because that's if it's, yeah.
So as permitted by Maine statute or as outlined in Maine statute?
As outlined.
Outlined. That's statute, right?
It's a statute.
Yeah. All right, so executive sessions will only be used to discuss authorized subjects as outlined in Maine statute. Board members will be held to the strictest confidentiality regarding executive sessions, subjects, and discussions. Okay.
Is it worth saying and conclusions? Like the subjects, the discussions and the conclusions?
Well, you can't vote during executive sessions. There's not a conclusion. You're just discussing, and then if there is something to vote on, you have to come back and you have to vote in the meeting. So it ends up being,
Public.
the vote ends up being public, yeah. Does that sound good, Jenna and John?
Yes.
All right, and then 13 is we agree that committee, chairs will act in good faith to schedule meetings which can be attended by the full committee and relevant staff. Committee chairs are responsible for providing agendas at least 3 business days prior to the meeting and meeting minutes within 1 week of the meeting. All committee meetings will be recorded and or live streamed whenever possible. I mean, this goes with our other policies. The only thing is we get ready to seat this new building committee meeting committee. Sorry, my brain is like fried today, apparently. As we seat this new building committee and they start having meetings and seat their leadership team, this is really important that they know. We struggled with this pretty heavily last year. So technically, if meetings don't have 3 days notice, they are to be canceled. So, I presume, well, there will be a new chair because our old chair is no longer, going to serve. So if you two just could kind of keep in the back of your mind to update whomever that leadership team is.
Does it make sense to something we know out with this?
Yeah.
Requirement,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
just to make
that's a
sure
good
people
idea.
know way ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like sometimes super unpopular, but.
It's always super unpopular when you cancel a meeting.
Yeah,
right,
It's never.
I
people are
mean, we've
never happy.
experienced it. so
yeah. Yeah.
How does that work? Cause I remember with SBAC, we had to vote on the meeting minutes and approving them and all of those things. I know we don't do the same with the subcommittees. We kind of just provide the minutes type
Mhm.
thing. Of course, SBAC too may not meet weekly. Do they have to be approved meeting minutes or do they just have to have the meeting minutes available in their first presentation within that 1 week?
So they should have their minutes. They don't have to be approved. I don't know I don't know if you were choosing to approve them just so that the committee had a say. I don't remember.
I think I don't know what influenced it, but we always.
Yeah, I can't recall either what influenced
You
that.
could
It was
post
just-
a draft of the meeting minutes and then approve them at the next. meeting.
Yeah, you could do that
You
too.
could do that. I think the approval usually is so that everybody agrees that that's what was said.
Yeah.
To make sure the record was correct.
Which was worth it in that larger committee. We did have changes made.
Yes.
Sure. Reading them.
Yeah.
we'll just like, right early on, say.
Yeah, this is it, because I mean, with our, you know, to what you and Freyla are saying, with our other committees, we really held them to that standard and we would cancel meetings, right? And so, you know, we gave the building committee, I think, some leeway as they were finding their way, but
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
Do we need to have the same concerns about meeting with a quorum without public notice? Because I certainly know that, but I don't know the numbers, but people did work outside of those Monday meetings. Whether it be on smaller subcommittees, things like that, but now we have a smaller group that our quorum number might be a lot smaller.
I don't think that's an issue because the issue with the quorum, the public law is with public bodies that are changing
Okay.
stuff. I think that's different, you know, it's so it's not that you're not holding well, are you holding an unauthorized meeting of a committee if you have too many people at the same time and you're discussing work of the committee and depriving other committee members of the opportunity to participate? You are.
Yeah.
And the
That's not
public.
good. And the
Mhm.
public, yeah,
Okay, so we have to just be clear about subcommittee work. Being, you know, there being a notice, there being.
Right.
An agenda.
well, subcommittee work usually is exempted
Mhm.
from that. So subcommittee work is exempted, like you don't have to do a public notice of your subcommittee meetings. And meeting minutes of that and recording of that, like it's the committee meeting where action actually happens. The subcommittee is usually allowed to meet and do the work and then they come back and present it, and that's the record of what happened, because at the subcommittee, it's a discrete project. You're researching this, you're accomplishing this, you have a task that's authorized and publicized by the committee as a whole, but like a subcommittee is not authorized to act without the committee voting on it, approving on it, and directing it.
But don't we hold our subcommittees to like notice and everything and making sure that the,
We do.
Yeah, I
We,
mean,
as the board, we do, yeah.
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 Cause
But
I mean, I
a
think it is
subcommittee
fair,
of
like,
your subcommittee, like there's,
Oh,
like you
yeah,
are a
your
subcommittee.
committee is
Yeah.
the building committee.
Yeah.
Yes, so,
Okay.
yeah,
And again, the building committee isn't strictly a school board committee either,
yeah,
right? Like
Yeah,
that
that's
is
both
really a
bodies.
community committee.
and they're
So-
also not making decisions. They're not
Mhm.
making binding decisions, they're not
Right.
voting on binding decisions.
all right, yeah.
The only
So
thing
exempt
I
from
would,
quorum, but not exempt from meeting notice.
right, and I would throw a little wrench in here, just something for us to think about. I presume, I don't know what this committee is going to set in the way of subcommittees.
They do have a
But if you've got a subcommittee, if you've got 4 subcommittees working on drilling down into the solutions, like the pros and cons, the whatever you want to say, to try to drive to 2, I imagine the community is probably pretty interested in that work.
I think that's what I kind of mean. We
Yeah.
have such a level of public interest that like,
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of hard for, even if we're getting down to a subcommittee of a subcommittee, to not announce when certain subcommittee work is being done may not be the best way to advertise, not like bringing the public along and inspire that and really understanding, because I do think we have a few of the public who would come to the subcommittee work, but if they find that it's happened and it hasn't been stated or publicized, meeting minutes made and things like that, I would get more, especially as we get to phase 2, where a lot of those decisions will be made. It's not as much abstract, like I was thinking this, and kind of feeding ideas between each other and combining projects and letting things kind of grow. Now we're kind of getting to a true analysis and looking at, you know, the deeper meanings and costs and facts and operating impacts and things like that, I personally think that it might be a good time to step up some of the requirements.
Yeah.
But I also, I don't have the longevity experience here to know how much we're stepping
You
into
can-
muck.
You can like, nobody's gonna complain that you recorded too many meetings.
Right.
Or that you
Yeah,
had too
you
much
can't
announcements.
over-communicate.
Can
Or
never
that you
over.
over communicated, like that, like that's never gonna be the blowback. In fact, it's always the opposite. We didn't know, you didn't tell us, you didn't realize, it was unclear to us. That's always so I think that if you wanted to establish, and again, this is the only, like, assuming that DEI doesn't meet for much longer, if at all. This is the only committee that's a hybrid committee. It's not strictly a school board committee. It's a community member committee. you could certainly create your own norms, and that might be part of your committee's purpose, which I think you're
Mhm.
saying is there's legitimate reasons for the committee's own work, that this would serve its purpose, and so you certainly can step up requirements for that, if you guys think that that's what needs to happen in order to properly communicate, in order to, legit, like, what's the feedback we got last time? We hid
Mhm.
stuff, people felt that there was not enough transparency,
Mhm.
that decisions were being made in the dark. That's the feedback that I heard, and so
Mhm.
if we want to combat that by putting every subcommittee meeting recording on the website, that is a very effective way to do that.
And minutes, and for those who don't have
Yeah.
hours to watch, right?
Correct,
Like,
yeah.
same process, right? That they're able to come along.
I mean, seriously, some weeks there, with all subcommittee work, there could be 12 hours. worth of stuff
Right.
to-
Right, and people, like, we don't have time, they don't have time, so,
Right.
but the ability to read minutes and know what's going on. Mhm.
And but that's not a bad idea, and that's a lot, I think you talk about your community outreach part of the SBAC. This could be part of that strategy.
Mhm.
And it could be an effective part of the strategy. It certainly would dispel the notion that we're trying to hide any of the information or how any of the information is getting to us from people.
Yeah.
I famously say I'm not on any of the building committee, nor have I ever been, so. I'm in the same boat as a lot of people when I want information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just a time check. We have about 30 minutes.
Yeah, so we're gonna switch over to goals, unless is there anything else anybody feels like we need to add?
No.
Jenna, John, do you feel good, or is there anything you would like to add?
Well, I
I'm
feel great.
comfortable. I'm comfortable with everything so far.
All right. John, you said you were too?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so if we look over to our goals, so the purpose of our goals is to outline what we are going to what is important to us, what we're going to focus on, but I guess it would be for now until June.
I think we have I want to, are you ready to go into one or not?
Yeah, yes,
Sorry.
No.
Racing ahead. I want to keep the building as our number one goal. I think we need to work on the language of that goal because it makes some assumptions that may no longer be good assumptions. And so I think we need to sort of collaborate with town council and the community to address the space needs of school district. So
I'm happy to offer up the language that our team is using for that goal.
great. Yeah, I read that earlier and I was like, this is not a goal that I can get behind, given the change in sort of the direction.
No, and it's not happening, right? Like, we're not acquiring land right now. We're not getting a referendum passed right now.
Correct.
What is the language that you,
So the language that our team is utilizing is to develop and implement a plan to address facility constraints relative to community growth and student programming needs.
can you read that one more time?
Yep. Develop and implement a plan to address facility constraints relative to community growth and student programming needs. I like it.
What I do like about it too is that, and I guess for us, I think we keep the collaborate with town council language. But what I like about it is it's not only the building, but because one of the things in the back of my mind, when I was at the town council finance meeting is we have to start thinking what we're going to do if this big bubble comes to be and we have all of these students and we have no space. So this goal talks about all of that, not just a building, right? So are we going to need to buy more portables and put them in Memorial Park? I'm just making something up. Are we going to need to find land somewhere that we lease and build portables on? How are we going to manage our facilities when in when we know we have this mythical number of 2027, but we also know Eight Corners had a really large bump this year. So 2027 is, what we've been kind of leaning on, but
Can I say
considerably,
something?
yeah.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. 2027 doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
2027 happens because the schools, district size of the classes coming in every year between now and 2027, which is within our primary school life,
It's a
will
drill.
happen every, this
It's
is
now
not,
on.
this is a snowball. It is not a light switch. And the snowball is down the mountain a third of the way. So there will be another third next year, which means that we're gonna have, Eight Corners is busting at the seams,
Yeah.
is what I heard the quote.
Mhm.
And that's gonna get worse, and we're gonna have to make some very tough decisions about how to address that within the next school year, more likely. When 2020, by the time 2027 arrives, we are going to be knee deep in this problem.
Right.
And it's like stepping in quicksand, it's rising above us. Unless or until we really need to make some concrete plans. I
Yeah.
think we started to take some steps. I don't think they're adequate. And, we've stashed some funds in the long-term capital project fund, and
I don't think that's gonna be adequate.
it's not gonna be adequate,
No.
but sort of we're looking at, it's a really crazy situation looking ahead because we're come off a number of years of higher than normal. We've come off better economic times than historically have been true. So we're coming off a period of high economic progress. It's unclear that will continue. I hope it does. But we don't know that will happen, and we're coming into a place where we're gonna need a lot of money. We're gonna need a lot of money to build whatever facilities that need to be done. And we're gonna need a large amount of cash infusion in the next couple years to address the short-term crisis until a longer-term solution is made. So when we talked about how expensive it was gonna be by not getting the last project through the finish line, that bill is starting to come due, and it's gonna rise every year until we have a solution.
Yeah, I did think at the, as we were listening at the, town council finance meeting, I did say to Diane, it feels like it's time we start actually just putting this in the budget. So
Yeah,
not
me too.
not as we're saving in our capital improvement plans, but these are actual line items in the budget
You know, the
because,
bus fund,
the
bus fund.
not the bus fund, the turf and track. The turf and track fund, both funds, I'll share, both funds, yes,
We have a lot of needs.
yeah, and.
We're gonna have to
yeah.
fix buses. We need buses every year We're
Yeah.
gonna need more buses if we have more students.
Right, and I would like us to continue using that, so because the more we don't have to bond for buses and the land, I'm sorry, and the
turf.
turf.
Yep.
The better we are, it feels weird to say, but you actually save money, right? 'Cause you're not spending on the interest payments for the bond, so even if they're short or long term, it doesn't matter, we're still saving money. So, if we can continue to use that capital, that pot of money that, and we can continue to add, that's what I would like to see it for, those two big things.
100%.
This piece, I think, has to become a line item in the budget.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think we need to start talking about what are we gonna do next year if the Eight Corners kindergarten class comes in with 25 extra students? Because we do not have a room for them.
Right.
Yeah,
Like, we don't have a room for them.
like, are we redistricting? Are we putting up?
Right,
another-
these are the questions.
Like,
Because
yeah,
the hill has space.
I was-
Well, the
that
reality is our other two primary schools also do not have space.
Yep.
So we could increase class size, but we are not going to be able to add another classroom.
I mean,
We're gonna have to add a classroom by
Without-
like getting land.
Without physically
Enlarging.
getting something that adds a classroom.
this was kind of like the, sorry if I am repeating what's already been said from stepping out, but, that was like the one thing I saw glaring missing on this goal one, when I was reading through them, that like, it's a wonderful goal to get the referendum passed and move forward, but we need like a big old Band-Aid, so I was gonna say adding like an action item of like coming up with some 2025, 26,
Go
27.
address short-term needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that was what, okay.
Yeah,
just maybe a tangent question and maybe better directed for the finance committee, but in the past, I know that we've asked for money from the, whatever fee they collect. for
Oh, the impact fees?
Yeah. And so I don't know if it's time to start being like.
There's not
set
very
some
much
more
there.
Not very much.
There's very little there.
Stop.
There's almost nothing. there.
No, we heard that in the budget. I could
Yep.
like, it
Yep.
was surprisingly low.
It was ridiculous.
It
Because
is
it's
within the
been
town's purview
redirected.
to direct those funds however they see fit.
They've used them.
Yeah.
So we would just put it in our budget and.
I mean, we're gonna have to, right?
say what could have been.
We're gonna have to I think the action item I think to what you're saying, the action item is this has to get cleaned up, but budget for short-term needs.
We need a plan for short-term needs.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do next year if 30 more kindergartners walk into 8th graders? Like literally,
We need to
where,
put it. in
where are their
budget.
desks gonna go? What are our needs gonna be?
So it's really planned for
How are we gonna
short-term
fund that?
spacing.
It's, yeah, we need a plan. As a district, we have, the town council is not gonna be like, here's X amount of money, go do something. What we need is, this is our plan, we need you to fund it, and then we are gonna have some tough conversations if last budget season, we had an incredibly responsible budget, and it was still a heck of a fight
Yes.
to get that budget
right.
across. the
Yeah.
finish line.
Well, I was gonna say too, like, I mean, I think we do need to get it in as a budget line item and everything, but we also need to have a plan. Like a full blown planned out where we can, you know,
Yeah.
look at Diane, I don't know who,
But the
Diane,
demand-
Todd, I'm not
Yeah.
really sure, but look
Both,
at someone
yeah.
and say, you know, we have the money, but also also the input as well, I'm sure along the process, but like this is what we're gonna do because those kids are showing
Yeah,
up
they have
in
to.
3 months or something, cause like I would be anxious to say like, okay, the budget's passed, but now we don't know how we're using, or we don't have a
Because-
fully defined, or we're gonna do one of these 3 things, like. Since
Yeah.
it's potentially like less than, it's 9 months away, basically.
Well, I think the thing that I
Did fast
heard
math
the
on
last
that.
2 budget cycles, really loud and clear from the council is that they need justification for what we're asking. And so if we just show up and we're asking for, I'm just making a number up and probably shouldn't even do this,
Say
but if
X-
we just say
X amount.
X dollars, yeah, we want X dollars, but there's no plan for what those X dollars are for, they're going to be hard pressed to approve it.
They're not
Right.
going to do this. They
Absolutely,
will
yeah.
not. do this.
So.
Which I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
they're the stewards of the town's money, right? So, yeah, I think the first thing is the plan for the short-term spacing needs. The second thing is the budget for that plan, I guess.
Yeah, and then how do we start, like, cause we
What if
can't
we-
save money for no reason, so we have, if it's a school district, we have to be very cautious about how we plan ahead for financial asks. And so the best way to do that would be to build, so to have an expenditure next year that's gonna serve that, which will be justified given the population we're seeing right now and that we expect to see in the next 2 years. So we can do that, but there has to be, we need a plan.
Mhm.
We need, like, in 2027, what's the best plan? I mean, we've had lots of snide comments, including some snark for me about where we're gonna put students in the coming years, but I think the time for that is past, and the town of Scarborough is now gotta reckon with the decisions that it has made through inaction for the last 15 years. Like this,
Yeah.
and the dollars and cents, it's gonna be painful. It's gonna be very painful.
So,
And it's gonna be money that's wasteful, absolutely wasteful, because we're gonna then build something to address the needs, and people are gonna have a lot of problems.
So is
And
it
yeah.
budget
We need a
for,
plan and a
Yes.
budget.
and land, most
I
likely,
would say a comprehensive. plan.
potentially, yeah.
I mean, we could just stack them up in the House of Lights. Or
Several.
wood.
on the
Well,
grassy front?
This is where I can get really
Either
started.
way,
about this,
there-
like I can get really.
I don't even.
The House of Lights is where the
You can
Scarborough
understand.
Food
Oh,
Service
yes.
Oh, man.
So maybe it's budget for expenditures associated with the plan?
Yeah, I mean, we need space, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, but that all comes under the plan, right?
Yeah.
Because
Like,
what if
yeah.
like for 1 year, the plan is that class size will increase to 20 kids? I'm just making numbers up,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's gonna be.
what if that's, or 25 or whatever it is? What if that's planned for year
Yeah.
1, but year 2 is, because the other thing to keep in mind, I remember Todd telling us, you know, you can't order a portable and it arrived tomorrow.
No, it takes
Right.
years. It takes years.
And
Yeah.
I think I understand.
Years.
We don't know what they necessarily cost right this minute, but I think I understood it.
It's
was
about
like
$500,000.
to
And
have
that's
it,
not the
like-
build out.
No, that is with the build
That's
out.
Oh, with the
So
build
like
out.
to have it be pad ready,
Okay.
right, with all the hookups, including, you know, electrical, fire suppression systems, et cetera.
They
Yeah,
gave
And
us a
can you
higher
remind me,
number.
is that,
Well, cause it's $500,000 for one, but you need two.
Okay, that's the.
but is
So it's
this
a million.
just, classroom add-on, or is that like a portable school?
No, that's just classroom.
Cause my concern is with what Todd had kind of explained with our current sites. There's really nowhere to put just a couple class, like you'd have to put up a whole new school. Or are you housing kids on, again, just random, but like the high school field?
Yeah, or
Because we
Memorial
had to,
Park
are we attaching one of the elementary schools to the middle? Are we like, cause the current elementary school structure is so limited with
Yeah.
its surrounding space.
Mhm.
So it, you know, the $500,000 is if we can get away with just the classrooms, but we likely will not only have to look at that if we're
But you
popping
need
up a
two.
whole.
It's $1 million a classroom.
Well, it ends up being, is it 4 classrooms? Because I remember he said if you buy one, you have to buy two.
Yes. you got
A
the $1
portable
million.
comes in pairs.
Yeah,
right? There's
so
two
that's worth
classrooms
$1
in one.
million.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then he also said, like, if we're dropping them right here in Memorial Park, you also have to have an admin building, a
Yeah, that's what
cafeteria,
I was
a
trying to
gym.
get to, yeah.
Like, it
A
keeps,
nurse's office.
Oh, yeah,
right,
it's
it
not-
keeps, it's not just like $1 million and that's it, it keeps going.
We're
Right.
not throwing his hands out.
Yeah, I mean, we'd really have to go back and, you know, look at if there is, you know, any available space at all, even if that comes at a sacrifice of either parking, dedicated parking or playground area. Right? I think
Yeah.
we're heading in the direction that those are the really hard conversations that are
Yeah.
gonna need to be had.
Right.
This is not going to be painless. Well, people are going to be upset no matter what
Right.
happens. It's gonna be very painful for
Yeah.
a few years.
And even if like you do throw another couple classrooms on, those kids have to eat some lunch somewhere
Oh,
too, and like.
Fair
they-
enough.
the-
Yeah, you have to start doing
That's
that.
what
And
we-
then
That's what we've been trying to explain, right, in the
right,
past
yeah.
6 months, is
Right.
that, you know, even if we can solve, right, like, oh, we can squeeze 2 more classrooms, you have to be able to accommodate for that growth in terms of all of your other shared services that exist within the building.
Yeah.
Right, because your
Yeah.
cafetorium, or however we are calling it lately,
Cafeteria.
right, can only fit so many students at one time.
Yeah.
You can only have so many lunches within a course of a day when you're doubling that space for PE classes. You have more classes, you need more PE classes, you have less time to eat lunch in the cafeteria, right? So you can see the,
Degradation.
you know, you can see the snowball getting bigger just in the 30 seconds I've been talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so back to what you originally asked about Diane's goals, so like this is our goal, like Diane's specific goal might be work with Todd to develop a 5-year plan, right? Like,
Well, and,
that's how.
and I think the other piece of it is, and I think we need to stop talking about 2027 as if it's like a 1-year thing. Again, 2027 is a swell, almost like a tidal wave that's coming up with the tide. And then it remains long
Right.
until the building project is complete. And the
Right.
4 rehabs were estimated, last I heard, to be 12 years. So we need a Band-Aid solution for a population swell that's gonna hold us for the next 15 years, a generation of kids. Like, that's our reality, and I don't think that
Yeah.
people are ready to reckon with that, because it's painful and hard and big and scary and expensive.
Yeah, but now is the time we have to start doing it. Do we want to put an action item under there about the building committee?
I wanna delete our action items and the.
Oh, I deleted both of those. I added it, so it says collaborate with town council to develop and implement a plan to address facility constraints relative to community growth and student programming needs.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
And then action item number 1 is, sorry, I just. Action item number 1 is plan for short-term spacing needs. Action item number 2 is budget for expenditures associated with
the plan, the spacing plan.
And can we not call short term? Can we call it interim? I don't think it's
Yeah.
gonna be short. People are gonna think anyone can pull together for a year or two and do that. It's not a year. or two.
Right.
We're talking
It's up to 12
years.
years.
Years. Yeah.
Why can't I spell interim? Okay, and then, there. And then budget for expenditures associated with the interim plan. Okay, and then do we need a third for, do we need a third for, the building committee?
I mean, like, the action item is this, is the SBAC committee. Like they are the action item.
Yeah, I
And it's already implemented, like it's going, and it's gonna do
Yeah.
its job for, until June, so I don't think we have an action item to take till they are finished with their work.
Yeah, and I feel like the only action item you could do is like attend the workshops or like something where you're staying in tune with it, but I don't even think that's worth making it an action, yeah. Okay, so we're good with just two? The two we said? Okay. All right, our previous goal two, was that good, Jenna and John? Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
All right, goal two we had last year was promote and grow a district-wide culture of trust, inclusion, and collaboration. And so we had focus on effective communication with the community, staff, and students. Host 2 staff and student-centered workshops annually and consistent with the DEI committee's charge, promote diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels. So I would like to keep this.
I like to amend some language in the action items, but yeah.
Yeah, I would, yes, certainly, we can amend the action items. I definitely think for number 2, what I'd like that we're doing this year that's a little bit different is holding those, sessions, those information sessions. We have one tonight. What are we calling? The presentation, the special presentations.
Oh, from all the building
Yes.
departments, yep.
So for number 2, instead of saying we're gonna host 2 staff and student-centered workshops, what we're actually doing is hosting monthly special presentations from the district.
Yeah, I mean, and.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanna. You're gonna do that year round. Or you're going to say just routine, maybe.
Yeah, we could say routine, and then if it's not monthly, yeah.
I just, you know.
We might
Christmas
skip
rolls
budget
around.
season.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have them already all scheduled in.
We're not skipping anything.
I feel like one thing that wasn't necessarily called out in a way that we're kind of being inclusive and kind of nurturing our environment and everything is, sounds like we do staff spotlights and things that yeah, that like might be nice to call out that, you know, it is something that we do in order to. I don't know.
Or look for ways to promote, and celebrate the work that individual
Yes.
district are doing.
Yeah, and I mean, we're doing it, it sounds like, so I think we should
I
call
think we're
to,
expanding it to students too, maybe.
yeah,
Oh,
that's what
yeah,
it sounded
yeah.
like.
I
So,
think that's great.
yeah, I think it's nice to
Yeah.
call attention to something we're doing.
And I think even the monthly meetings, right, are an attempt to really make sure that we're having a student-centered focus on our work every month,
Right.
right?
So maybe we'll say, how do I word, I'm gonna look to you because you're always so good on your feet. How am I going to word this? The district presentations one. Let me put the spotlight so we can come back to yours.
Just regular updates from different facets of the district or different
Yeah,
departments.
it could be to promote. Or like, okay, so it could be promote, or it could be to build capacity and understanding of work happening across the district with our students through the use of ongoing presentations. That's very wordy. But that's really what it's about, right? Like the reason why we're adding those in is so that we're giving you a window that you might not otherwise have into some of the really key work that's happening.
So is
So then
it,
that way, when there are decisions to be made, you're not feeling like you're learning about that program or that department at the same time that you're being tasked to make a decision.
And I also feel like, particularly when it comes to finance and budget, you know, not truly understanding what's going on in our school systems and, you know, having that sight on throughout the year of everything where, you know, if we're being called to cut something or to add something, you know, what is our true impact down to the students, not just at this kind of 30,000
Right.
view that we're at, so.
all right, so I wrote build capacity and understanding about student-centered work happening within the district with monthly presentations. Through monthly presentations. Okay, do you think that encompasses the spotlight awards?
Yeah, yeah.
Can use regular instead of monthly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or routine or
or
whatever.
routine.
So I think regular, I don't know.
Or frequent.
Okay. And then what did you guys think of? Now let's go back to one, because the focus on effective communication with community staff and students.
It's
Mhm.
really important.
Me too. And then the third, we probably should change.
I like to see, the DEI committee has made recommendations twice that this board has voted on and accepted twice. I'd like to see that be changed to, implement the recommendations that were approved by this committee of the DEI recommendations. I think that is the natural conclusion of the DEI committee.
I think my only fear of doing that is it sounds like one of the first complaints from the first time around, again, I wasn't around, so please do correct me if my recollection is incorrect. Was that like, it was kind of a vague, like, we'll accept it, and then nothing kind of occurred. But if we can take the recommendations and kind of specifically say, like, these are the ones we will work this year to implement, whether it's, remember there was one about addressing having, communications available in multiple languages or things like.
Yeah.
I saw that in the
You're
newsletter.
working on it, yeah.
So happy. But, you know, keeping it, cause you know, I hear their frustration that, you know, we said, please do it and nothing came of it. So if we can call to attention very specific things we can work on this year, I think it might be more effective than just kind of saying, we'll work on your recommendations. I just don't.
Yeah,
know.
because the one of them, we can't, right? Their
Yeah, we
one
can't.
is the higher.
Yeah, right.
So.
Right, and I think that's like, so that's the tenuous place with trying to write this, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't just wholesale turn those recommendations into actions, right? Because that is a subset of all kinds of other, you know, right? There are a lot of competing needs in the district.
Right.
And so.
I think that's what I want to keep it vague.
Yeah.
This board has adopted those recommendations twice and approved them. And so like, I think there needs to be a place in our goals that shows that we adopted them and that we're working on them. You know, I don't think we have to hire. I think it's about creating a position that is focused on DEI work. I think how that gets done is up to, is not, I don't think they were so specific. I don't think they can necessarily all be accomplished in a year. Some of them are really granular, but I think especially given that we're dissolving this committee and evolving their work into whatever language you want to use, there's a lot to talk about language. Moving that work into the school district, which I think is appropriate.
Well, what if that is the goal? What if that's the action item?
That would be fine. I don't want to lose those recommendations as like it's done. I think we need to make sure that they live on. I think that's what we owe that committee, especially after they did the work and that we've adopted their recommendations. And are implementing parts of them.
Right, because they're already in progress, right? Like the equity teams are in progress, the language, the multi-language is in progress.
Right, and again, like, because that is tied into another one
goal.
of our
Yeah.
goals, which is, right, to foster a welcoming, inclusive school environment by prioritizing a social emotional learning approach with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know,
So what
again,
if
you're
we,
starting to see those things are already happening.
right, what if we say evolve the DEI committee's recommendations? How did you?
Or move the DEI recommendations into the equity teams. Although this is not a school board goal. This isn't a school board goal, this is a leadership goal.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
leadership goal. So, but I think we can, as an action item, we can review the DI committees in a year to see what progress the district has made
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what
I
other
mean,
progress needs to be
compare-
done. I think that's what we can do.
Yeah, I said that again.
Compare the benchmark or whatever.
Yeah, so review the progress made on the DEI recommendations this year. Just
Yeah.
review the progress. And I think that one of the big fears of the DEI committee is that the work will just get lost. Like it'll just poof
Right.
and disappear.
But I mean, as to Diane's point, it continues to be a strong piece of one of our goals.
Yeah,
So I think. I mean, there's been a lot of progress made, not by the district leadership and the individual schools. I mean, there's been so many cool things that have happened, so
yeah.
like the recording of
The naming.
names.
Oh, that's so cool at
It's
Eight
like
Corners.
the
I'd love to
best.
see that go district wide.
Yeah. It's just such
So
the
is the-
best
So
idea.
there's a teacher at Eight Corners who is recording every student saying their own name so that the name pronunciation is correct, because some names are difficult to pronounce. And then they're trying to figure out a way to put it in Power School so that that kid's
Lives
name
on, yeah.
lives for their entire school career. So if the teacher says their school list and says a name, like, for example, my name, Schoenfeld's my maiden name, was difficult for people to see because it's unusual and it was mispronounced a lot. And you always knew it was my name coming up because they would look at the first name and then they'd look at the last name and then go back to the first name. I was like, you could see it on the face, but having that piece for students, especially students who are not used to having their names pronounced correctly, is it fosters a very welcoming
I
environment.
love that, yeah.
Yeah, it's so, I don't know, I feel like that's such a highlight in the work that's been done.
So we
There are
say,
pieces that come out of that committee that are like that are just
yeah, that are
tiny
awesome.
little things.
Yeah,
That are
they're huge.
Yeah.
So I said, review the progress made on the DEI committee's recommendations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think just,
perfect.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that,
At our annual review or whatever.
Annually
Um,
review.
We have 2 minutes.
Yeah, do we have one goal left, which is 3, which I would actually want to keep in,
Yeah.
which is the quarterly progress, because now we're finally getting to a place where we can hear progress and
Right.
I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, I agree.
Including those, yeah, perfect. I don't want to change it, not because we're short on time.
No, not because we're short on time, because it's important that we understand, right,
Yeah.
what we're, and also, like, you think, like, we talked at comms today about making our workshops, like, kind of thinking about our goals. You know, some of the workshops that we have an SEL workshop, we have a nutrition workshop, those things would fall underneath that, right? When you're talking about student well-being.
Yes.
Yep. All right, John, Jenna, does that sound good to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so with no objections, we will adjourn the workshop at 6:59. And
So-
see you in just a minute for.
My calendar